The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is supported by Bear Crop Science. Okay. So Anastasia, we're getting very close to where a lot of farmers are trying to get out into the field to plant some canola. One of the real sort of challenges or issues that they're dealing with is this idea of having to go in and seed in less than ideal soil temperature conditions. What are some of the things that farmers need to be thinking about?
Well, one thing would be is how early is too early. Typically, you do get higher yields when you are seeding earlier, but you need to make sure that those seeds you're putting in the ground have the right temperature that they're going to be able to germinate and emerge. For example, things like canola, it will germinate at 1 to 2 degrees Celsius, but it's much more ideal if it can be in soil that's at least 5 and more optimally 10 degrees Celsius.
How many corners can we cut? If the soil temperature is 2, are we foolish?
I wouldn't say foolish. If it is getting late, soil temperatures are still cool. You probably want to seed so you're not getting your canola development so that you're getting the flowering period when it's so hot in July. That's another thing that we're up against. If you could hold off to at least 3, you're probably a lot better to go. At 3 degrees Celsius, you're probably going to see germination and emergence at about 15 days, whereas at 2, you're probably looking more at like 3 weeks. And then if you can wait till it's a little bit warmer, 5 to 8 degrees, you're going to see probably 50% of your plants already emerged by at least a week.
When we're going in less than ideal conditions, should we be increasing our seeding rates to, I guess, fend off any increased mortality?
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea. The less ideal the soil conditions, the reduced amount of plants you're going to have come up. So if you could compensate, if you are going to seed at 2 degrees Celsius, 3, maybe bumping up your rates by a half a pound or even a pound if it's quite cool and you have really dry soils, that might be a wise option because you may only get 30 to 50% of your plants actually surviving. You only get 70 to 85% of plants that do survive and come out of the ground.
Okay. So I guess, should we be working off that 5 pounds per acre, or what do you recommend in terms of the seed rates?
Well, I would think 5 pounds would be a really good idea to start with. With that, even if you are getting 30, 40, 50% of your seedlings actually surviving, you're still at 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds coming up. That can be quite a few plants. You would definitely reach your 7 plants per square meter, maybe not the 14 that they recommend, but you'd be at the lower end of that range where we want to see those plants to be.
And you said that ideal is 10 degrees, the soil temperature?
Yeah, that's when we see really quick emergence out of the soil. You're probably, if you go back after a week, you would see quite a few plants at 10 degrees Celsius. But I mean, your soil temperature will range during the day too, where it's quite cool overnight. 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's probably quite warm, and then going back down again.
And so if we check in the morning and we're less than, say we're closer to 5, and say we were looking for those ideal temperatures, by the time we start and get to the warmer afternoon, that soil temperature has come up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can kind of get going. I guess that's going to be the real challenge is, to wait for ideal conditions this year is going to be quite impossible. So when we're seeding less than those 10 degrees, like we probably will be this year, how much will emergence be slowed?
Well, if you're seeding at 3 degrees Celsius, some of the research coming out of Ag Canada studies say it'll take about 15 days for you to reach 50% emergence. Whereas something like 10 degrees Celsius soil temperature, you're probably reaching that 50% in less than a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in most situations and in the past, we've said if it's 5 degrees, go.
Yeah.
Because you can't wait for 10 degrees Celsius. And I think it was 2008 or 2009, the soil temperature did not warm up that quickly. And it was probably June before we got those 10 degrees Celsius consistently.
Does seeding in less than ideal soil temperature conditions have any impact on the yield that we might receive?
Well, it's a bit of a trade-off because I imagine in a lot of the studies that they have, and I have information through crop insurance, if you're seeding before May 1st, in most years, those guys are getting higher yields. Like they're probably sitting more at, I've got a chart here. Seeding within the first 2 weeks of May, you're probably more at 108% of your yield, whereas you get that around May long weekend, you're sitting at about 100%. Like it does dip down. If you're seeding actually for last week of April, here it says you're probably only about 102% of your yield.
So there really is a huge incentive to seed early, and we talked a lot about how we can't seed canola till after the frost date. Now we've got soil temperature where we got to wait for the soil to warm up. Now, I think what we see now is that the potential for yield is worth the risk.
It is, yeah, and that may come into play when your canola is actually flowering. So if you have most of your flowers coming out when it's 32 degrees outside and 20% humidity, you're probably going to get a lot of heat blast. Whereas if you get those flowers coming out maybe last week of June, when temperatures aren't quite so hot, maybe there's some more humidity, you're probably not going to get as bad a heat blast. And that contributes to yield too.